Now we've got a special treat for you. We are going to interview a playwright director of a theater performance coming up in the Tampa Bay area called, his name is Bretton Reis. He is part of a festival called the Voices of Truth Festival that's going to be based out of here in Tampa. And Bretton is one of the playwrights that's going to be putting on a performance. This festival is about a 2.5 week long festival that'll end on March 28th. It's ongoing now. There's a show every night, a different show every night for about 2.5 weeks. And Bretton Reis is the director and playwright of one of the performances. So Bretton, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, Bretton, this Voices of Truth Festival, it's an interesting festival. It's a new I don't say it's a new phenomenon, but it's every show is virtual. So
right.
There's people. So, give us a little background on what drew you to this festival and how'd you find out about it?
Sure. Yeah. So I had written this play last year, sports related. We'll get to that. And was looking for, an opportunity to share it, and found out about the festival through a playwriting website. Basically, they were looking for submissions. So I hadn't submitted it anywhere, but they were looking for particularly plays based on true stories. And it seemed like my play would be a really good fit, I hoped. And so I sent it in and heard back that it was accepted. And so went from there. And we've been in rehearsals and getting ready to film it for the virtual festival.
Now, yeah, this virtual festival, if you're interested in buying a ticket, the beautiful thing is you can be anywhere in the world, and it's all these performances are live streamed. There'll be a couple of pre-recorded shows that'll be live streamed as well. But you can watch a show every night. It's Powerstories.com is the website, and it has a list of every night of what show's going on. These are all real life plays and stories, so they all have they're all based on true stories and true events and all that stuff. So it's a great festival. Again, if you're interested in theater, obviously most people can't go to the theater these days, so definitely would encourage you to reach out to Powerstories.com. You can buy a ticket for as low as $10 for a single night performance, or you can buy a package which allows you to see all the performances. Every show, after the show, you can have you'll be able to be invited to a Zoom presentation with the playwright and the director. So Bretton, you'll have your opportunity to speak to all your fans and all that stuff following the show. So Bretton's show is called Stat Geek and Natick, and it's based on a friend of his who's a big sports radio fan up in the Boston area. Bretton is up in New Hampshire, is that right? Boston area, New Hampshire?
Yep, currently living in New Hampshire. Got lots of family in the Boston area.
Yep, so Bretton's wearing his Boston Red Sox hat. He's a Patriots fan. So, a big sports fan himself. So I'm going to let, so how long, tell the audience how long you've been in the theater business, and have you been something you've been doing your whole life, or is this something you got into recently? Talk to us about your career.
Yeah, I started in high school. Some of my friends were doing the play, and it looked really fun. So I joined up and got hooked, and I studied it in college. I got my master's in theater, and then I've been working as a freelance theater artist for pretty much my entire adult life.
Yeah, Bretton's been involved in over 200 productions as either an actor, part of the opera, part of the stage production, as a director. This is meant as a total compliment. Looking at Bretton, he looks like he's about 12 years old, which is a great thing, because I know he's not 12, but he looks like he's about 12 years old.
I always say I'm actually 6'4", so I always say I look like a stretched out 12-year-old.
There you go. Well, I'd much rather look like a 12-year-old than a 75-year-old. So right? you got good genes, man.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. So what prompted you to write this show? And I know it's kind of based on a friend of yours, but talk to us a little bit about the show and where the inspiration come from.
Sure. So one of my best friends growing up, played sports with him my entire life. He was always he was the point guard and I was the power forward, playing basketball all through school. He also suffered, unfortunately, from a really horrific eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, and he passed away in 2015. One of his loves was sports stats. He knew everything about statistics. He was a nightmare to play against in fantasy, and he studied economics in school, and he was always very stat focused, and that led him to call into one of the most popular shows up here, Felger and Maz, big show. And
WEEI, right?
It's that one's yes, it's the Sports Hub. It's 98.5.
Okay, up in the Boston area. Okay.
Yep. And so he would always call in, and he used this on-air pseudonym, this moniker, Stat Geek and Natick, and he would call in with just the most out there deep dive stats that I never even heard of. He'd be like, yeah, the SOPS plus for Mike Trout was 182 that year. It was really good. I'd be like, what is SOPS plus? And the guys on air loved it because they'd be looking for these deep dive statistics, and they'd be like, hey, we need the Stat Geek, and he'd call in and give them the numbers. And so he had a lot of fans who didn't know who he was, but just knew him as the Stat Geek in Natick. And so, he had this really cool relationship, and that always stuck with me after he passed, that he had this impact on people who never got to meet him. And so I was looking at stories to tell, and that's one that definitely affected me. I miss him a ton, and I missed talking sports with him. So this was a way to spread his story, to bring awareness to an issue, eating disorders, that really needs light, cast upon it to fight it, and really make that story have an impact even now.
Cool. Yeah, like I said, this is obviously sports related. If you're a sports fan, we've all listened to sports radio. A lot of us have called into sports radio shows and with our opinion, all that. And I got to ask, while you're here, what are your thoughts on Tom Brady playing in Tampa, man?
I'm so conflicted. I was rooting for him. Ultimately, I was rooting for him. It helped that they were kind of the underdog there. But the team, the way that they kind of unceremoniously let him go, it just felt wrong. And I had to keep rooting for him. I had to.
He's a rock star of epic proportions down here, man.
Yeah, I bet. And Gronk, you got Gronk in the bargain too.
Yeah.
I mean, how about Gronk? He says, I would rather basically not play for a year. I would rather go away from the game than stay with the Patriots. It's like, oh man. And then sure enough, Tom Brady moves, and there he goes.
Well, I'll burst your bubble. We're recording this on the first day of kind of the NFL free agency period, and Gronk just re-signed with the Bucs like an hour ago. So he's back for another year with Brady and all the fellas.
Oh my goodness. You got a party boat down there, huh? Oh,
that's right, man. That's right. Well, your Patriots had a good day today too. They signed a bunch of guys.
Yeah, unexpected. They're not the kind of team who open up the wallet and spend that kind of money. I think it's been since like 2003. They were saying the last time they shelled out that kind of money, but it was very unexpected. And I think it's because everybody's really mad up here.
I know, right? Now, are you a diehard New England sports fan? All the sports teams up there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge Celtics fan. That's my number one team. Patriots, Red Sox, absolutely. Bruins too.
Yep.
Bruins been beat up by your Lightning the past few years. So. And the Boston-Tampa rivalry has been heating up for sure.
What kind of, I guess, do you want to continue to go in this kind of the sports genre when it comes to your shows, or how do you kind of come up with these ideas of things to do for the next show and things like that down the road?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. I love talking sports, and it's been really fun to incorporate kind of two passions and meld them together in this way. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of theater fans aren't sports fans. Right. That's kind of the stereotype that they're kind of these two different, very distinct worlds. So I'm going to see how this one goes. If there is a lot of crossover interest, and we get some theater people who are saying, hey, that was really cool, I liked the sports aspect. And if we get some sports people who are like, you know what, I hadn't seen a play in a while, that was really cool, I want to check out some more plays. If there is that kind of interest, then it's something I'd love to explore more. I think. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what the whole story is, and so I will definitely tune in on March 28th. But obviously, the sports angle is just a piece of it. It's more of the personal, probably relationship of him with the broadcast, with the radio station, with you, and the struggle he was going through with his disorder. So we're not going to tell away the whole story, but it's more of a human story than it is necessarily a sports story.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. It's about his relationship with the broadcasters, and his battle with this horrible affliction. And but it's interesting. I feel like sports, when it's at its best, it's about the narrative, right? It's about Tom Brady leaving the Patriots and forging his own path. Like, it's about the story. So, and I hope that that's what comes across in the play, is that there are these stories in sports that parallel our day-to-day lives all of the time, and it's just another way of looking at the world around us.
How have you had to adjust your directorial process when you're not in a live theater, as opposed to in an open? You're in an open room somewhere doing the performance, as opposed to doing in front of a live audience. How has that been different for you as both an actor and as a director?
Yeah, it's been very, very different. A lot of our rehearsals were just over Zoom. And so, and on one hand, that lets you really focus on the text and like getting in there and talking to each other and asking interesting questions, rather than worrying about how the play looks at any given time. But and then we get into the space, and everybody's staying distant, everybody's masked up. Even something so simple as not being able to see somebody's mouth when they're acting is really strange, because we tell so much with half of our face, right? So part of this story kind of gets lost. We're fortunate in that when we are doing the actual performance, we put all these procedures in place. We have to go through all these hoops, kind of get COVID tests and keep everybody separate, get the crew tested, have them in masks, so that we can film the performance without masks.
Yeah, right.
Which is really great. So I think that'll help tell the story, but it has been a struggle for sure to adjust to all of these new parameters. What are the
obviously every part of the country is a little different. What are the restrictions still pretty strong up in New England, as opposed, I know some parts of the country are a little looser as far as letting people get out and about. What's it like up where you're at now these days?
Yeah, it's pretty strict up here. Massachusetts in particular. In New Hampshire, we have a little bit of a live free or die streak. It's been a little bit looser. Massachusetts is pretty strict. It wasn't until last week that you could even have any performance, period, with an audience. It was just completely prohibited. You could not have a performer and an audience. And even now, it's I think it's like 8% capacity or something like that. It's to the point where it doesn't make sense to even try to have an audience,
right?
Because for all of the extra costs that you incur by having people there, you're not going to make it up with 8% of the audience anyway. So we're just really hoping for the vaccine.
All right, so tell everybody what day they can find the performance. I know it's coming up here in another week or so. Give us some details about the performance.
Yeah. So it's March 26th. You go to powerstories.com, you get your tickets, you'll tune in at 8 p.m. You'll get sent a code if you buy a ticket, and that allows you to access the video, and you can tune in. It runs about 75 to 80 minutes. There'll be a talk back after, and it's a really powerful story, I think. It's one that has greatly affected me, and everybody who I've shown the script to has really been affected by it, and I think I hope it's worth checking out. I really hope everybody tuning in will come check out our play. March 20th.
And where can we find you, Bretton, online as far as social media, that kind of stuff?
Sure. I have a website, brettonreis.com. That's a great place. That's a way to contact me. And I'm on Twitter at Bretton Reis.
And it's BrettonReis.
That's right.
So that's Bretton Reis. So find them online. I really appreciate your time, Bretton. Good luck with the show. Again, the Voices of Truth Festival is ongoing for the next couple of weeks. You can go to powerstories.com to buy your ticket, either for a single night performance or for the entire festival. Again, whatever performance you purchase, you'll have access to the show as well as to the director after the show's over on a Zoom call. So, Bretton, wish you all the luck in the world, man.
Thank you so much.